Live from the studio at the Northwest Florida School of Biblical Studies, this is Have a Bible Question, where you are part of the program. Now, let's go to the Bible for answers to your Bible questions.
Lori Council brings up, there's several comments on here. So y'all, if I overlook something, please don't think it's intentional. You mentioned on here, but that we might not have anywhere to worship freely in the future.
Then look at the last comment.
Yeah. Do you think that God will give us a place to worship? Will it all be underground and illegal? Frightening thought. One of the things I want to say is this, is I think we have an Americanized version of the church, and that perhaps, because look, the first century church didn't own buildings. They didn't have bank accounts. They had a treasury. There's no doubt. I mean, Jesus and his apostles had a treasury together. I mean, we know they had that, but as far as having an LLC and doing, we don't have to have all that for the church to exist and to worship. And
do you know where the church is growing the most right now?
Somebody told me China at one point.
It is China and Iran. Iran.
Really?
So right there, where the government itself dictates what religion you're going to belong to, the Christian church, now when I say Christian, I'm talking about a broad spectrum there, is growing. It is growing. It's the fastest growing religion in Iran right now. And they don't have buildings, and it's all underground.
And I just want to touch on the rationale I think that some people might have, that I've at least heard people espouse, and maybe people that are listening, I don't know, but the idea that, I know that Amy asked the question, are there some things worth dying for? And obviously the answer is in the affirmative. There are. Is freedom in the United States one of those things? And that's kind of the question. But I think that sometimes, and I'm not saying that this is Amy's point here, but I've heard people say that if we don't save America, then the church will not be able to survive. And I think that kind of comes back to the last comment. How are we going to go about this?
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't God always provided a way? Again, the church has flourished in the margins, and that's what Troy's talking about.
And I would actually argue there's some things about the Americanized church, and if you don't understand that, email me. I'll be happy to sit down with somebody and study that. But if you start looking just how much congregations can spend on, because like you take the program we do here. I mean, and we're on 11, 12, 13 different broadcast markets trying to put out the gospel, preaching and things. And it's like pulling teeth to be able to get support sometimes coming in for that. Yeah. But the reason we can is because, man, we're spending money, congregations, tons on buildings, on buses, and I'm not saying in and of themselves those things are necessarily wrong, but you start looking at the budgets, oftentimes the budgets become very inward focused on things of material that the New Testament church never even thought about.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for, it's great to have the studio here and we're using that in order to try and proclaim the gospel. But, I sometimes wonder if, and we've said this several times tonight, if out of that persecution comes a growth.
I want to brag on Avalon for just a minute, but he might have a comment. Maybe not.
You guys on the right?
Yeah, I did. Am I on there? Hey, you can see me back here.
Thank you so much for including me.
Yeah. Thanks for dragging me out of my hole here. Well, in regards to Lori's comment, she, I forget exactly how it was worded, but she was talking about worshiping underground. And essentially with that, if something like that does come up and it's illegal to worship, you have two options. You have the one where you worship underground in the homes, you get rid of the buildings. But then you also have the other option, and we already talked about that one in Daniel. What did Daniel do when he was told you cannot pray? He prayed with the windows open.
Yep.
He showed himself as an open example unto those that I will not bow down to the law of the land when it goes against the higher law of God.
And that could be the very thing that God has at work right now.
Exactly.
We don't know.
Exactly. So those are your two options, and you got to decide which one you're going to do. Yep. Neither one of them would necessarily be wrong, but you have to make the choice of which Christian am I going to be, which path am I going to take.
Right. I'll say this, and this is not because of persecution at all, but Avalon, I love this congregation, and we're an exception to the rule just by the nature of being a plant. Where the Margaret Street elders, when we were still a part of the church there, it was a self-selection process. We talked about it quite a bit, and so those that decided to go with the plant are ones that were sold on the idea of launching out and doing something, different than what they've done before.
Mm-hmm.
The result of that has been we've had delay after delay regarding our building. We're getting closer to getting that, but we delayed it purposely to begin with, just to ingrain in our even the conversation. Really, we told everybody, Lord willing, we'll have a building, but that's not our focus right now. We started meeting in the Avalon Middle School cafeteria. Then COVID comes around and no third parties are allowed or whatever. But what we've ended up doing is we have to be resourceful. We have to figure things out. And, so we've bounced around from the middle school to a couple of community centers, to homes, and to a pole barn on some property of the owners. I mean, some of the members' property, they own this pole barn. But a couple of weeks ago, when it was cold and windy outside,
I saw the picture.
90% attendance, man. I mean, that's,
Wow.
I mean, it's encourage,ing. And I think that that's what happens when we get out of the comfort zone and we have to depend on each other and we know that we've got to get this done. It brings out the best, usually the best in people.
Yeah, and I think it's good opportunities that we have. Kind of bring this to a close on this subject. Let me just say, our citizenship is first in heaven. We need to be concentrating on the kingdom and the Lord before we do anything else. That means every action we take when we decide to stand or to back down on something, or it's got to be becoming of a Christian, which would be with purity, the fruit of the Spirit. Can't be of anything that you'd see of the works of the flesh, or Romans chapter 1. So we got to make sure it's becoming of a Christian, and then make sure you're not hurting your influence as a Christian, and then do what you can. And we need people to speak up, stand up, speak out on certain issues. I mean, we need to be fighting this abortion, homosexuality, the home in general. And because I want to throw this out there, I mean, the divorce rate that we have, and the remarriage, and I mean, there's so many issues. Going back to what you say, morality. We're not saying be quiet. We're not saying don't speak up. Let's put our focus on the spiritual, though, as we go about these things. And then, in your secular life, if you choose to go into law enforcement, to go into military, to go into government, politicians, so that you can make a change, to be that difference, then I'm going to pray for you, because I've been there myself in certain areas, and it's challenging, and we need more Christians in those positions, more Christians out there.